Welcome to Clubfittingchronicles.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. Long awaited. I'm back. I'm here with Gene, and it's been quite the hiatus.
It has been. And there's been travel and everything else during all that time.
You know what it is? It's a thing called life. I think that's what it's called. Get in the way, something like that.
I had a good friend, and his saying was, if it's not one thing, it's several.
That's very true. Very true. Yeah. So, Gene, you were out on the golf course today. I saw you on the golf range. You were threatening to hit me with a golf ball.
I was, and, just to show you my accuracy.
Sure. You were testing out some things, and it was great to see, actually. But you never really pulled the trigger. I don't know why. But
I was afraid of hurting you.
That's okay, because of how accurate you are.
Yeah.
Okay. To have that confidence is good.
If you would have dived or dove to the ground or something, I didn't want to kill anybody on 18.
True. All right, fair point. Point. In other words, did you play well today with your accuracy?
Well, I was, let's see. We sat in the cart for about 2 hours and 45 minutes of the 18-hole round. We were always the third group on the hole, except for when we were the fourth group on the hole.
I'm guessing hole 13.
14. No, starting at hole number
4.
6.
Well, okay. All right.
Yeah, at one point we were 13 minutes ahead of pace, and we finished like 7 minutes behind pace or something like that. But it was just Bill and I, so we were playing as a twosome, and we were forever waiting. But I ended up, I was even par up until the 14th hole. Wind kind of got me there. Missed a birdie on 17, missed a 3-footer on 18, so I ended up with a rough 74. So
okay.
It wasn't terrible, but it was disappointing. There was a lot of the last couple holes. You're sitting there watching the clock, and it's 7 minutes since you left the tee box, and you're still waiting to hit your second shot.
Yeah.
And I was getting impatient.
Sure, that's always tough, right? Waiting that long in between golf shots. Definitely hard to stay concentrated and
and the excitement of knowing we were going to get together.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it has been quite some time, and this episode is I've been looking forward to it because we have been chatting back and forth the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. And questions have popped up, things I've been tinkering with, questions for myself, questions for yourself. And I've just been picking your brain on these things like I do usually.
It hurts.
And I'm sure it does. Hopefully it's not bleeding. But the topic of today's episode is really beneficial for what I'm going through right now. And the viewers will understand as we go forward. But iron shafts, that's the raise for the day.
Yeah.
And that's
what
we got going on.
We've been getting a number of people asking the question online. What's the difference between graphite irons and steel? Which should I get?
Mm-hmm.
And, my favorite question from a long time ago, I think it was episode 1 or 2, was what's the difference between a $500 shaft and a $50 shaft? And of course, if you remember, my answer was $450.
Right.
So, but we'll talk about, there are some pros and cons with everything in life, and including golf shafts. And so part of understanding what you need is understanding what you can and can't do with the options that you're looking at.
Sure.
So anyway, also got together, Adam said hi. Got together with Mr. Porzak, and we had a great time. They had 2 inches of rain the day before.
And what part of California were you in?
Del Mar.
Okay.
So Carl's
So I
got
was
it.
in California a couple days after you were.
Right.
Yeah. I was in,
You're up Santa Barbara area or
I
San.
was in Sunland. I played
Okay.
Angeles National Golf Club.
Okay.
But yeah, it was the one thing we had to watch out for were mudslides, landslides.
Yeah, it's always a terrible thing in the middle of your swing.
Sure. Yeah, especially when they got these big hills you're playing around.
Yep.
And natural habitats too that are just crawling with critters and creatures.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
They
fun.
have those.
Yeah. Nothing that bite though,
No.
thankfully.
No.
Just things that sting.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. No, that's fun. Adam, if some of you don't know, we had him on a previous episode, a couple episodes back. He is a swing coach based out of San Diego. And he's great, knowledgeable coach, has a lot of things under his belt as far as experience and skill. And if y'all want to tune in to that episode, I highly recommend it. There were so many good things we talked about, and just picking his brain and having him and Gene talk back and forth about equipment and the importance of it. It really is an interesting episode, to say the least.
And we just did that on his podcast, so that should be coming out in the next couple days.
Awesome. That's fun.
Yeah. 2 hours of bantering.
That's fun.
And 5 minutes of a really bad swing. Because he wanted to look at my swing, and I hit like 30 range balls before, like an hour and a half beforehand. Everyone was perfect. A 3-foot draw.
You got camera shy, stage
after
fright.
talking, it was after talking for, 2 hours. Every muscle in my body had tightened up, and I over elevated the club, and I was drawing the ball, and then I had to take the penalty of looking at my swing and going, I already know what I was doing wrong. But I couldn't make myself stop in the 3 or 4 swings that I got to take. And anyway, it was fun.
Oh, that's cool. That'd be interesting to watch. That'd be fun to watch.
Yeah. So, let's get started on graphite shafted irons. What is your thoughts or conceptions of graphite versus steel?
So a big, I think, I wouldn't say a misconception, but I would say a stigma, right, of graphite irons is only old people play graphite irons. Only old people play graphite, anything for that matter, which really isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
I think graphite in general is a great material.
Mm-hmm.
And could benefit a lot of people for a lot of different skill sets. You don't have to be a certain age to qualify for graphite shafts. However, do I think a high caliber player on the PGA Tour plays graphite shafted irons often? No. But that's a personal preference thing.
Yeah, and that's where you're wrong, because there was some guy named Matt Kuchar, and there were a number of other players. I don't follow the tour that much, who were playing graphite irons. Now, they all played the same shaft, and that's the Aerotech steel fiber iron shaft.
Yeah.
And that shaft has 59 miles worth of steel fiber wrapped around it, 1/10
the
the
steel
diameter.
fiber is a very popular,
very
shaft.
stable shaft. And that kind of leads us to the first pro about graphite is you can get it from 45 grams to 125 grams.
Mm-hmm.
Where with steel, you don't have that range.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that you have to understand is no matter what the material, the lighter it gets more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still, I have a Aerotech 70. I don't know if they still make that. And because I know how to tip trim a shaft, I tip trimmed a shaft to play as a stiff. And in fact, Doug hit that. That was one of the clubs that he hit and actually liked. And he plays with a stiff, and it was a senior flex shaft, but I changed it into a stiff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible to do that if you know how to tip trim and everything else in that, arena of graphite shafts. But most of the time you'll find, once you get above 75 grams, 80 grams, you can get them pretty stout.
Mm-hmm.
Where with a steel shaft, you get down, there's a new steel shaft. I have the flyer right here. Ta-da! And it weighs, what does it weigh? 75 grams and 78 grams. The 78 gram is a stiff. How stiff is that stiff? I don't know because I haven't seen it yet, but there was a Nippon made something called the Z-Loss shaft, and it was a 70 gram, somewhere in the 70 gram range. And I remember hitting the stiff in the shop, and it felt like it was an L-Flex, just really flexible. But again, that was the first venture into the 70 gram range with a steel shaft. They actually now have one in the 60 gram range. I don't know what it'd be like to hit it, but the pro part of graphite is you can make huge different, you can make any weight. There's some guys that I fit in California playing the Aerotech. I think they were 125s in an X, and they had club head speeds with 5-iron or 6-iron in the 115, 114 range.
Oh yeah.
And it was plenty stiff for them.
Yeah.
So you can do that. The problem is with graphite, the heavier the graphite, the harder it is to make additional swing weight adjustments internally into the shaft. So, you get a steel shaft and you get something, the diameter of the hole going into the head is 370 thousandths of an inch. Well, the shaft, the hole on the inside is probably 360 thousandths of an inch. So you can put like a 9-gram tungsten weight in there, or there's weights you can put in there and bury some extra swing weight. Well, you can't do that with graphite because the hole is so much smaller. It's like the head of a ballpoint pen. That's how big the hole is. Now, I would drill that out sometimes to add a little bit more weight into the head. But again, you have to know what you're doing. You got to make sure you drill it straight down because you don't want to have that drill bit popping out the side of the graphite. But again, the pro part of the graphite, I can reach a whole lot of swing weights. The con part of it, or a whole lot of weights. But the con part, sometimes I can't get the swing weight. You get a 45-gram shaft, it's hard to get swing weight no matter what you do, because it's just too light. Because swing weight is based on, for every 9 grams you lose in weight, you lose a swing weight point on the golf shaft. So you have to figure out, well, is lead tape going to be acceptable? If lead tape's going to be acceptable, then that's not an issue. If you get somebody who's a purist and doesn't want to see lead tape, well, then it's going to be hard to get swing weight.
Sure.
Any questions? I feel like I muddled through that a little bit, but
I just, you talk about, size of the opening.
right.
That is, that's a big deal. There's a lot of people that have those, whatever, weighted, with tungsten and
Yep.
All that stuff. So that, if you have a tour player made a switch to that could be a pretty huge difference trying to make up that.
And a tour player isn't going to care about the lead tape. They have more, you see lead tape all over their clubs. But the average Joe, that swing weight just becomes a little bit more challenging the lighter you go, and you can't do it internally. If you took apart any of the major manufacturers' clubs in steel, you will find weights at least, I would say, in 40% of the iron heads, because they're not that accurate when it comes to, they're plus or minus factor on the weight of the head. And so there's always weight into the shaft. The problem is you take a steel head, a club that had a steel shaft in it, and let's say it had a 7-gram weight in it because it was light. Now you go and want to put a lighter shaft in it, and you don't want lead tape. Well, first of all, you can't get the 7-gram weight into that graphite shaft. So that you've already lost some weight there. And the shaft, if it's lighter than the original steel shaft, you've lost some swing weight there. You have no hope of getting swing weight to a near where it was unless you use lead tape. So
Got it.
It's not unusual to find tip weights in clubs. There's no way you won't know that swinging a golf club. Oh, there must be a tip weight. You wouldn't know that, but it's trying to get swing weight after that, because the head is still, if it came in 7 grams light and it needed the tip weight to get it so that they could get it to their swing weight,
Sure.
it still needs that 7 grams.
Right.
And then making up for the lighter shaft.
Got it.
So the other thing and I'm not an expert on the way shafts are made. That's not my expertise. I've watched graphite shafts being made, but there's a steel mandrel, okay, and it has a taper to it, and it's called a flag, and they take material and they wrap it at different angles, and that will I can create because of material thickness, material strength, the angle at which I'm wrapping, all those I can affect the flex of the shaft, and I can affect the bend point. Now in steel, generally speaking, if it's lightweight, it's going to be a high launching shaft. It's hard to have a lightweight shaft low launching. A very stiff tip. There's not enough material to make it stiff. But in graphite, you can do that. You don't do it a lot because, again, if it's lightweight, how many people, your age, Josh, are going to want to grab a 75-gram shaft in their irons, and you need to keep the ball down with that. That
ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, that person doesn't exist. So they don't make a lot of that. Every once in a while, you'll run across something like that where it's, tipped stiffer than what a traditional steel shaft of that same weight is. And it's simply the process of making the shaft. They can do that. In steel, it's more of a drawing the steel out. It gets thinner and thinner. And that, you can't say, well, let's make the section 4 inches from the tip a little thicker and then make it thinner 5 inches from. I don't know that you can do that with steel. I am not a metals person, but I know in graphite it's possible to do something like that. In steel, it's probably not possible. Or if it is, they're going to charge you an awful lot for it.
Interesting.
The con, again, with graphite, generally speaking, they're going to be, like you already mentioned, it's going to be, ladies' clubs. It's going to be for seniors. They might have something in a regular, they might even call it a stiff just to soothe somebody's ego and make them think that they needed a stiff and they got a stiff. That stiff isn't really that stiff, but it doesn't matter because there's no rule of how stiff is, so it doesn't really matter. But you'll tend to see that when companies put graphite shafts in, you don't see them unless they're upcharging you a whole lot, putting in a steel fiber. One of the Aerotech shafts. They're not going to do that unless they really upcharge you. So most of the time, if you're wanting to test out graphite, the only thing you're going to get to test is lightweight. So if you wanted to find out, well, what does it feel like to hit a pretty heavy graphite shaft? I don't know where you'd do that unless you went to a good club fitter who has a large selection.
Right. Interesting.
Any other thoughts with that?
No, I mean, other than the fact that, um, graphite, like I said, has such a stigma built around it. Um, I don't really see much of graphite from younger players, people my age.
Right.
But I think they could really benefit from stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, which brings us to the next point. One of the biggest pros for graphite, vibration dampening.
Hmm.
You know, if you take a
Well, the Velacore is a huge thing right now with drivers. I
Yep.
mean, you would think that would be better even with irons. I mean, you're creating more vibration.
Yeah, well, anytime you have any kind of a miss hit, most people think it's they're feeling the face. You can't feel the ball's on the face 5/10,000ths of a second. There's not enough time to give you a feel. What you're feeling is the vibration through the shaft. And you
Hmm.
give somebody, if I give you a triple X iron shaft and you hit it on the toe, it's not
Ow.
going to feel very good. You could hit it on the toe and I gave you a L flex shaft and you're probably not going to know that you hit it on the toe because of the vibration, the way the vibration is transferred. The stiffer the shaft, the more the vibration is transferred, the more you feel of that vibration. What is that good for? You have arthritic hands. Graphite shaft is a good option because one of the things that helps your hands to hurt is that vibration.
Hmm.
You hit it, a lot of the pros were going to the Aerotechs, and one of the comments would hear is, I hit so many golf balls. I don't
Yeah.
need the vibration. The negative, you lose the vibration.
Right.
With steel, you hit one on the toe, you can say,
I had
that
that
was
on the
on the
toe.
toe.
Yeah.
Hit one on the heel. That one was on the heel.
So in other
But
words, you lose feeling of where you hit it in the club
where
face.
impact is, exactly. You know, um, unless spend time on the range and you put tape on the face and you just, okay, I didn't nut it, that wasn't dead on center. It felt a little toey. And then you can look at the face and see, was it toey? Some people can learn to pick that up.
Yeah.
Some people, depending on their feel, they have no idea. I would have people all day long at the shop, and you get one guy, yeah, that was about a quarter-inch out towards the toe. Yep, you're right. I'd have another guy go, yeah, I think I hit that dead on center. No, that was almost an inch and a half to the toe. You know, they,
Right.
they couldn't tell.
Right.
And again, it's not that's for me that's a negative because I want to, if I'm hitting something off the toe a couple of times, I can
You want to
adjust.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I have no idea, I just know it didn't go.
Right.
And that makes it a little bit harder to adjust, let's say.
Sure.
So back to pros, one of the nice things about graphite, if you have a 355 tapered head, so that's like a lot of the OEM stuff is a taper. Not all, but a lot of it is, especially more towards your players' clubs. They tend to use a taper tip shaft, and part of the reason is it's easier for them to put them together, because all I got to do is tell the guy the one with the 9 on it goes in the 9 iron. You don't have to trim anything. You just stick it in the hole, let the epoxy dry, and we'll have the other guy, on the other side of the factory, he'll take the saw and cut it at length. But the guy who, if I want to put graphite in it, I can taper the shaft to make it fit the hole. You have to know how to do that a little bit. You have to set an angle with your sander to make sure that you can abrade the tip at the right angle so that you can get it at 370 at the top of the where the hosel ends, and you want it 355 thousandths of an inch at the tip end, so it will go all the way into the hole. You can do that with graphite. You can't do that with steel. Steel, you got to find, a taper tip shaft. The hard part again, you can, you're not going to be able to adjust the flex with a taper tip steel shaft. You can adjust the flex with a taper tip graphite shaft simply by the way you trim it before you set that angle. Probably did that 5,000 times, putting graphite shafts into and tapering the tip to match. And after a while, you get pretty good. It's amazing how you can eyeball. Yep, that's 356. We got to get just a little bit more off of that. And then you stick it in, and perfect.
Wow.
The only negative, there's a company, Mura, they make beautiful irons.
Yeah.
They make, if you purchase the heads and you're going to build the set for the first time, they want that shaft to be so tight that it's usually about a 357 about 357 taper, and you have to ream out the last 200th or 2,000ths of an inch so that the shaft fits. And every once in a while, I either myself or my assistant, we would stick a shaft in just to see, okay, how far do we have to, do we have to ream it all the way, or is it just the last little bit? We'd stick the shaft in, and it was stuck. We couldn't pull the shaft out. We knew it didn't bottom out, and we had no epoxy in there anyway. And I would actually have to use my shaft puller to get the shaft out of the head. And we would play catch and have a box with towels in it to catch the head, because the head would shoot off.
Wow.
Which it never does that with epoxy. But that's how tight that hole would get.
Wow.
And so it was always, you stick the little reaming drill bit in there, and you go, yeah.
You hope for the best.
Yeah. But hopefully it won't stick, because there was nothing worse than having to play around it. And again, you're looking at a head that, might have cost us $100. You do not want that thing to hit anything.
Right.
Except for the towels in the box.
Right.
So, the other con with graphite, you can taper it and all that. That's a wonderful thing. They tend to be more asymmetrical than steel. So remember the test that we did where we would twang, how with your irons, we put the laser pointer on there, and we're looking to see it going straight up and down.
You're puring the shaft, yeah.
Listen, can't use the P word officially, because that's a proprietary thing. We're flowing the shaft.
Flowing.
Yeah. But with a graphite shaft, you tend to find more movement, like this or figure eighting it. Steel tends to be, at least in the heavier steel, tends to be a little bit more stable. Graphite, I've never found that heavier or lighter was any more symmetrical. In every case, I always would find the place that is the most stable. But if you do that, then it's fine. If you have to put it in label up, that's the only way you can play golf, is if you look down and see the label. Well, that might be a problem with graphite, that you're probably not going to have as much of a problem with than steel. You'll find little variance a lot of times in steel. Every once in a while, I would find a big variance, a big off symmetry movement. But with graphite, always. I can't think of a time that I found I might have put it in the perfect place, but if I rotated it, get some kind of another pattern than what I really wanted to have. So that's a con with graphite. We talked a little bit about one of the pros with graphite is I can get a variety of flexes, but on the other hand, one of the cons is, and it's not as big of a deal today, is torque. And again, the thing most golfers don't understand is torque is not measured the same by every company. Every company has a different way of measuring torque. But
which is
they clamp the shaft in a clamp. They have a rod that sticks off of. They put a like almost like that laser pointer, except for it has an arm that sticks out of it. And depending on the weight, they'll either put a 1 pound weight on that arm or a 5 pound weight on that arm, and then they measure how much does the shaft twist while it's clamped, the butt end is clamped down. And they
before
don't know,
breaking?
not breaking, it'll just how much twist is there. And there's a gauge that you can, if you into that, you can have, and it will tell you, okay, that turned 2.5 degrees or whatever it was.
Gotcha.
The only issue is, and it used to be a huge issue, it's not as big of a deal today. Sometimes when you get some of the iron shafts with lower torque, they really feel boardy. Because they're, a steel shaft, most people don't know that steel shafts have torque. A lot of, like a dynamic gold, the torque on that is probably around 2.5 to 3 degrees. So there's a twisting to it. Well, they were making, and they have made, I don't know that they still do this today. I didn't do a lot of research on this topic. But when they were first really coming out with a lot of graphite shafts, they had some iron shafts with a torque of 1.8. They thought if we could eliminate that twist, it would be great. No, if you eliminate that twist, it's rebar. And it does not feel good to hit. And so a lot of golfers have experienced that in the past. Not as big of a deal, but that's something to be mindful of. On the other hand, you get something, a torque of like 5 or 6 degrees, and you're somebody who has a strong pull of, accelerating the club from the top, that's going to feel like you have a noodle in your hand.
Yeah. Know that feeling.
So with steel, usually that's not an issue that you worry too much about, except for, again, when you get to the super light steel. But with graphite, that's something just to pay a little bit of attention to, knowing your swing. The harder you pull down, you're probably something in the 3 to 4 degree range. There are a lot of touring pros that play, 3.5 degrees of torque in some of their driver. Well, if you can play 3.5 degrees of torque in a driver, you can play 3.5 degrees of torque in an iron. You're not swinging it nearly as hard.
Interesting.
So, other things that I was thinking about, for people who want to go to graphite, don't go to the driving range and hit off mats. I have probably replaced 100 shafts, 150 shafts. I have a friend, I replaced a couple of his shafts because he's back in snow country, and the only place before coming out, he will go there and hit golf balls off of the mats. And he is splintered right above the hosel, a couple of shafts, because he got a little fat. Yeah. And, all mat is fuzzy cement.
Right.
And so something to be mindful of. If you have anger management issues, you might want to stay away from graphite. If you like to slam your club on the ground, because
it'll splinter very easily.
It will splinter very easily. I was playing at PGA, the stadium course in Palm Springs, and we decided that
PGA National, where Jake Knapp just shot 59.
I don't know. Is that where he was at?
Yeah, off topic, but yeah.
Okay.
He was at PGA National anyway.
Well, this is the stadium course in Palm Springs.
Right. California, completely different than Florida. Yes.
Yep.
Over by La Quinta.
Right.
Yes.
So we were playing, and we decided that day, because it was only 117 degrees, to play from the tips,
Oh, sure.
just for
Easy.
punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like 7,350 yards. And then we would throw a ball in the sand trap at 16, and anyone who could get the ball out of the sand trap and onto the green got dinner paid for.
And that is a very easy bunker shot,
Yeah,
to say the least.
25 feet straight up. It was great. I got dinner. I was the only one
That's
who ever
good.
got
You never
out
had.
of
You
the
never had
trap.
to. That's good.
Yeah, but we were on the first tee. I hit my tee shot. I'm holding my pose, and I just set the club down, and I didn't realize the tee marker was a large rock. And when I set my club down, I hit the rock, and my driver shaft splintered. I wasn't in anger. It wasn't anything hard. I just put it down, and I caught an edge of the rock. So I had to tee off with a 5-wood the rest of the day,
Oh, okay.
which I didn't reach many fairways. But so that's an issue with graphite. It does tend to break.
Break pretty easy.
Steel breaks when you hit a tree with it.
Oh yeah.
I would have people come in. I don't know how it broke. Well,
I've
maybe the
also
bark
seen
on it.
graphite shafts break in the butt end of the grips.
Yeah, and that is that can be dangerous. I had somebody who did that, and the graphite came through the grip. It's the way it splintered,
Yeah, could stab you.
and it cut his hand. He had to go to the hospital, get stitches.
Yeah.
So that's again a negative. That's happened.
I've seen that before.
Yeah.
I've seen it before. It's actually really crazy. It was in the middle of a downswing.
Mm-hmm.
He was took it back. Everything was fine, and then all of a sudden you just see the shaft just go whoom whoom.
Yeah.
And it bent. It was like this, and then you just see the club head just, and his ball went straight left. It was the weirdest looking ball flight ever. And he's like, "Whoa, what the hell just happened?" And then, the top probably, I want to say 3 or 4 inches, from the top, the butt end of the club to the middle of his grip was just flimsy. It was just a noodle.
Yep. And the thing you have to be careful with is if you go to get your clubs regripped, one of the things that I've experienced when people brought their clubs to me is the person before me used there's a tool that you can scrape the old tape off with.
Yes.
Well, if you have it at the wrong angle with graphite, you dig.
Yeah.
And there would be, I would have to, you got 3 shafts where the fibers, you have broken fibers, and
they're revealed. Yeah. I've regripped a lot of customers' clubs the last couple months, and I'll take the grip off, and I'll take the tape off, and I don't use the scraper tool because I just I pull. Yeah, I either heat gun, or the way that I cut the grip, the tape comes off with the grip and it's clean. But there's fibers that are revealed, and I tell them, I said, hey, with graphite you gotta be really careful, because if you have anything that's splintered, I mean, the shaft it's bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of force being exerted on that end of the club.
Right.
So that is something just to be mindful of. The other thing that has always been interesting to me is the cost difference that people are charged for graphite if they're buying a set of graphite irons versus steel irons. A lot of the time I would,
cheaper, more expensive,
more expensive.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times, the steel shafted version versus the graphite shafted version, $30 difference per club, $40 difference per club. I can tell you that the cost difference that the company is paying is probably about $4. Because they're not putting in the most expensive graphite shaft in the history of golf. A lot of times, it was a shaft that I could also get, and A steel shaft might cost me at that time, say $16, and the graphite shaft would cost the same graphite shaft that they had in their irons was $18.
Mm.
And they would talk about, yeah, I decided to spend an extra, $300 on the graphite shafts. And I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. It doesn't have to cost that much more. Generally speaking, unless you're, even the steel fibers, a steel fiber versus a Project X iron shaft.
Yeah.
Okay. You take the two of them. My cost, and again, I'm not a big wheeler dealer. I'm not making, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars buying shafts, but through the companies that I deal with, the cost difference is about $7. The cost difference between a dynamic gold and an Aerotech is maybe $17, $18.
And that's huge.
Yeah, but
That's huge.
but that's the most expensive shaft usually in graphite is the Aerotech.
Sure.
They're gonna upcharge you $45.
Right.
It's not a $45 difference between,
Or even you look at the Ventus too.
Well, the Ventus is my cost on a Ventus is it's an expensive shaft.
Yeah.
Is it good for most people? Probably not. Is it good for people who swing out of the 20 miles an hour? Yeah, it's probably a good shaft. But again, it's all about the golfer, what the golfer needs. The shaft, the label on the shaft doesn't make it go further.
Sure.
Nor does the cost.
Right.
Unfortunately.
A lot of his ego, right?
Oh,
you have these golfers that they think they're a lot better than they really are, which is totally fine. I mean, to each their own. Mm-hmm. But you have people, especially my age, that they swing fast, but they don't swing the fastest in the world. They think they do. And it's one of those things where ego plays into a factor, and they play the completely wrong shaft form. And then they're wondering, why am I hitting my driver so bad? Or why am I not hitting many fairways? And then they crank one 330 yards and like, man, I pounded that, but I had no control. I can't do it again. And it's like, when you're hitting a Hulk shaft, a triple X, I mean, you shouldn't be, I'm sorry, but like that's a big shaft. The Hulk shaft, you know which one I'm talking about? The hazardous Hulk shaft.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like the big craze nowadays. Everybody's like, Hulk shaft. I'm gonna hit it 350 yards, and it's like that's not what you're gonna do with it.
A quick story. I am doing a little testing of a shaft, and I'll do a little reporting on it. So far, it's all favorable, but I have another shaft that's coming in. The company is graciously sending me. Adam Porzak, clubhead speed 117. And he was hitting his driver, he was working with a kid, college kid, showing him, what he needed to change, moving through the ball. And Adam's hitting it up the hill. It's probably going about 310, 305 with the range ball. And it has a little fade, which is his normal ball flight.
Yeah.
Well, I give Adam my shaft, my club. It's 44 and a quarter inches long. His is 45. It's got a shaft that is designed for somebody swinging between, I think it's 80 and 88 or 89 miles an hour. Okay, so a little bit under Adam's swing.
Sure.
Adam takes one swing with it, hits it about 315, as straight as an arrow, and he just looked at me. And he started telling me he had been I think it was in Connecticut, and he was working with a long drive guy, just watching him hit, giving him some ideas and stuff like that. The guy had an L-flex shaft in his driver, and he was killing the ball. Again, it goes back down to the feel,
Yeah.
and if it makes me do something that I shouldn't be doing, that's not a good shaft for me. You know,
Right.
when I said, "How did that feel?" And he goes, that was incredible. I'm going to have to rethink swinging softer shafts, because, I mean, you couldn't have drawn a straighter line with that club, you know, when he hit the ball. I mean, the most beautiful penetrating flight, and he was just, oh my goodness. And that's what most golfers, you know, they think. You know, I was out on the golf course, and a guy had a Ventus, and he was, you know, he hit it this way, right and left. And you could just see he was swinging hard, because it felt like he could pole vault with it and not get any flex out of it.
Right.
So he was kind of swinging out of his shoes. I gave him my club right down the middle.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my goodness.
Didn't feel like a piece of rebar.
It didn't. He actually thought it was good. So
yeah,
one thing for golfers to not to shy away from. You know, the same thing is true in irons. You know,
don't let ego get to you. I'm sorry, I gotta say it. There's so many people out there that just let ego get to them, and you gotta find what's good for you, and that is what it is. You can't just go telling people, "Oh, I'm swinging a triple X, 75 triple X in my driver," and it's like, well, if you're not in fairways and you're not hitting it over 300 consistently, I mean, is it really a good shot for you if you are a good player?
right.
This is if you're a good player, and this is if your potential is much higher than what you're getting out of your current makeup. So it's a big thing to remember, not to be egotistical when trying to find something that works for you.
Well, and I shared this story about Fred Couples a number of podcasts ago, where he had a 5-wood that he absolutely loved. Again, this is a story that was told to me. Loved it until somebody told him it was an L flex. And then he took it out of his bag.
Sure.
Because he couldn't swing it now. But
right.
Most golfers, they think that the shaft is going to do more than it can. It can only line up center of gravity of the head. Can only, the head can move slightly forward because the center of gravity is a little bit back behind the face, and that's as far as that shaft can move at impact. It's not bent. I would get people all day long who take their video with their phone, and then they bring in their, the video, and they'd show me the shaft looks like a snake coming in, and it spells out, I'm going left as it's coming to the ball. And I go, no, it's not doing that. You got a cheap phone, camera. You don't have one of those.
That's the frame.
You don't have enough frames per second to catch what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's why it looks like it looks. It's not happening.
Right.
So hopefully, we answered some questions about graphite. Again, it's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's a thing.
Right.
And the benefits, you get a little bit larger range of what you can, weights. The negatives, it can break a little bit easier, especially if you have anger management issues, where you like to toss clubs. They don't send, especially if you have 2 clubs, and I would get this one. This is another favorite. I just tossed my clubs towards the bag, and one of them hit the other one and, on the shaft and broke it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's typical.
Is that warranted? Let me look. I don't think they warranty throwing your club and having it be hit by the other club. I don't think that's part of the warranty. So, I know you got some schoolwork to do, I guess.
Something like that.
I'm so sorry.
I got one more week and then spring break.
No way.
Yeah.
And then does that go until September? Or?
I think this time it goes until I'm dead.
Okay, good.
Unless I go back to school.
Yeah, I've decided to officially retire from teaching at the end of the school year. So I'm down to 9 weeks.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I'll
Congratulations.
get to spend a little bit more time on the golf course and maybe a little bit more time doing some of this stuff.
That is awesome. Well, congrats to you, Gene. That's a big step.
It is. It'll be fun. Looking forward to it.
Well deserved.
And with that, I have to say goodnight to Sammy and Emma. They still are my Papa. You know how to do that? Yeah, I figured it out. I'm not as old as you think I am. So, well, I hope look forward to seeing you in person again. Do we want to work
Likewise.
on do anything with that iron issue that you were talking about before?
You know what? Yes, I got a little bit of tendonitis in my elbow. Yeah,
Are you using a golf ball or roll it out or anything to?
I have a Theragun that I've been using.
Okay, good.
Not sponsored, by the way.
No.
The Theragun. If you're looking to sponsor, no.
Yeah, there you go.
Theragun has been doing wonders.
Yep.
I do it a lot on my tricep, and I've been stretching out my tricep muscle a little bit and making sure that I work into, my forearm because it's pinching my ulna.
Oh, okay.
And whenever I grip the golf club with my left hand, in specific my ring finger and my pinky finger, every time I squeeze, it just sends a sharp shooting pain through my ulna into my arm, and it's just not fun. But
no.
Other than that, I'm striking the ball well. The ball flight is a little bit high, and I'm still carrying it. It's just I'm still spinning it a little too much. And I want to get it a little bit lower. And as far as yardages go, I'm still carrying them well over, like for example, 9 irons 145 to 150. My 8 irons like 160 165. 7 irons 175. If I really go after it, 180. These are just
so
stock
what kind
yardages.
Of golf ball, what ball are you playing?
I'm playing a Pro V1X left dash.
Okay. Because that's another thing maybe to experiment a little bit with.
With golf balls, right. So I'm hitting a low spin golf ball.
Excuse me. That was a good sneeze.
There you go.
But no boogies. So that's a good thing. Yep. Well, I better let you go because you have 6 minutes before you have to do whatever you have to do.
Papers and projects.
Oh, good.
But I got one more week until spring break. So
there you go.
It'll be good. We're looking forward to it.
Ooh.
Let's go. I'll be in Texas, and we have a tournament in Lubbock. Not sure what the golf course is. Forgot the name. But it's in Lubbock, and it's going to be real windy and real cold. Tree line.
Perfect.
Going to be my favorite.
Perfect. It'll be like when I played golf in Nebraska. The wind was always blowing 30 miles an hour. It was just either out of the north or out of the south.
It'll be a good test. It'll be fun.
Yep. Yeah. Have a good one. Say hi to Dad. We'll talk to you soon. And God bless everybody. And I hope you have a good spring break.
Take care.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to email us. In order for us to continue equipping you with great knowledge and content, consider blessing our show financially by checking out the links in the description below. See you next time on Club Fitting Chronicles.